We had two big elections Sunday. In Poland, they held national elections. In Hungary, they held local elections. Now, these two countries stand out because in both Hungary and Poland, you have a strong conservative party that essentially runs the government outright. In Hungary, you have Fidesz, and in Poland, you have the Law and Justice Party. These are two of the largest parties in Europe. They have the biggest mandates of any party in continental Europe, and the globalists absolutely hate them. Vast resources have been deployed to fight these parties. Now, in Poland, the Law and Justice Party got more votes than they ever have before, even more than the 2015 general election. The only caveat is, in 2015, they took a majority of both houses of the Polish legislature, the lower house and the Senate. They got a majority with less than 40%. This time they got 43%. They took a majority of the lower house, but they got 48% of the Senate. And there's some various reasons for that. The left is trying to spin this into a strategic victory, but there's really no way to spin it. Poland is an extremely conservative country. Now, in Hungary, Fidesz completely dominated the rural areas. If you look at the county councils, nearly 2 out of 3 seats are held by Fidesz now. However, they lost ground in the urban areas. Several Fidesz mayors were defeated by the opposition, and most notably, they were defeated in Budapest, the capital. And also, Fidesz went from 17 out of 33 seats in the Budapest General Council to only 13 seats. So essentially, Budapest was lost to the opposition. However, Fidesz is still extremely strong, and there's no reason to think that Fidesz is going to lose control of the federal government anytime soon. So let me start with the national elections in Poland, and I brought out the whiteboard that everybody loves so much. So here we have the Polish Law and Justice Party. In 2015, they got less than 40%, but they won a majority of both houses of the Polish legislature. This time, they got over 40%. They won a majority of the lower house, which is assigned through a complicated proportional representation system. But for the Senate, which is direct mandates, they won 48%. So they did not get an outright majority of the Senate. The globalists are trying to spin that into a victory. It's really not that big of a victory. You could call it a strategic victory for Civic platform, but all things considered, conservatism is still extremely strong in Poland. Now, the first thing I want to point out is Confederation got almost 7%. Now, the Law and Justice Party is conservative on social issues and populist on economic issues. Confederation is an alliance of small parties that are very hard-line conservative on social issues, as well as having a more traditional right-wing libertarian view on economic issues. So they are for low taxes, low welfare, traditional libertarian economics. The interesting thing about Confederation is that most of their voters are young males. Among males in their 20s, Confederation is extremely popular. So I can see this party growing by a lot in the future. Now, the most high-profile leader of Confederation is a guy named Janusz Korwin-Mikke. He was the leader of the Polish New Congress, which did win seats in the European Parliament in 2015. And Korwin himself became a member of the European Parliament, and he became very well known for triggering left-wing meltdowns in the European Parliament, especially on the issue of feminism. He would talk about gender roles in the European Parliament and just trigger outright meltdowns. People would be screaming and yelling in the hallways. And at any rate, I really like Confederation. The Polish Law and Justice Party is basically the dominant party in the ECR, European Conservatives and Reformists. The ECR is to the right of the EPP, which is the establishment center right. So basically, Korwin, the most high-profile leader of Confederation, he was allied with Matteo Salvini's Lega, the French National Rally, etc. And the Polish Law and Justice Party is basically running the next most conservative group in the European Parliament. Now, after that, you have two coalitions. And so part of the reason that the Law and Justice Party won fewer seats is because there was more unified opposition. And so you have Civic Coalition, which is dominated by Civic Platform. Civic Platform is part of the EPP, which is the establishment center right. They used to be basically a center-right party. They've been moving further and further to the left for years. It's basically a moderate party now. The actual coalition includes some left-wing parties. Now, this is the Polish coalition, which is dominated by the Polish People's Party, which is also part of the EPP, which is also basically a center-right party. And so the Polish coalition is the Polish People's Party with some other small centrist and some small center-right parties. Then you have Lewica, or left, which was the actual left-wing coalition. So the hardline leftists still only got a tiny percent of the vote. So basically, up here, you have parties that are to the right of the EPP. So this is all to the right of the establishment European center-right. And then this is more the establishment center-right and the establishment centrist parties. And then this is your leftist parties with only 12.6%. So no matter how you spin it, Poland is an extremely conservative country. So the upper house, the Senate, the Civic Coalition got 43 seats. Law and Justice got 48 seats. The Polish coalition got 3 seats. My guess is that Law and Justice will form a coalition with the Polish coalition and have 51 seats. And that's how it's going to go down. Because even if Civic Coalition formed a coalition with the Polish coalition and the left coalition, they still don't have a majority. Now, in terms of Polish constituencies, there's 41 constituencies. The Law and Justice Party was the first place party in 36. Civic Coalition only won 5. And this was mostly on the western border. So historically, if you look at where the Civic Platform has done the best It basically looks like a map of the former East Prussia. So what happened is, after World War II, the Soviet Union mass expelled the Germans from East Prussia, and then they replaced those people with people from Ukraine and Russia and various other parts of the Soviet Union. And what happened is, those are the areas that developed a sort of Homo Sovieticus identity. And then further east in Poland is where the people have a stronger Polish identity, and they vote for the Law and Justice Party. Okay, now I want to talk about the local elections in Hungary. So like I said, Fidesz dominated the rural areas, but they lost ground in the urban areas. And there's a few reasons for that. The biggest reason is that the opposition parties united. And so when you look at the different cities and counties, you see alliances of 5 to 6 parties. Even Jobbik is part of some of these opposition alliances. I can remember 10 years ago, the media was saying Jobbik was a neo-Nazi party. And now we see Jobbik as a centrist party, as part of coalitions with left-wing parties against Fidesz. It's become really interesting. Vast resources were deployed in Budapest especially. And one issue is that in local elections, permanent residents are allowed to vote even if they're not a Hungarian citizen. So we had something like about 140,000 foreigners who were eligible to vote, and a half or even over half of that all lives in Budapest. And so the opposition spent vast amounts of resources reaching out to these people and mobilizing non-citizen foreigners to vote. And Fidesz just did not have the ground game that the opposition had in the big cities. Fidesz did not deploy the level of resources to mobilize people to the polls. And I've talked to people in Hungary, and what they're telling me is there are a lot of right-wing conservative people who agree with Fidesz on immigration and demographic issues. But you have to keep in mind that Fidesz has been in power off and on since the 90s. When Viktor Orban first became prime minister, Bill Clinton was president of the United States. They've been in power off and on for a long time. And so people have reasons to think that they're not doing things right, or they're corrupt, or they should be doing more. And so a lot of conservatives in Hungary agree with them on some of the most important issues, but they're not excited enough to actually go to the polls and vote in a local election. Although the bottom line is, there's nothing about this election that suggests that Fidesz is in danger of losing control of the federal government. Now, there's another party I want to talk about. So, Jobbik, years ago, was seen as this radical right-wing party. I always found them kind of odd because of the Turanism, which that would have to be a subject for a whole new video. I don't want to get into that, but I always found Jobbik odd, and now it's gone from this allegedly extreme neo-Nazi far-right party to basically a centrist party that's allied with left-wing parties. Now, there's a new party called My Homeland Movement. And the leader is a former vice president of Jobbik. His name, which I am probably going to butcher, and you're going to post comments saying I pronounced it wrong, but here goes. Laszlo Taratsky. And for years and years, he has been the mayor of a small town in the county of Schöngrad, which is on the southern border. Now, the place he was mayor was ground zero for illegal immigration. And this is a very interesting guy because he arguably is more responsible than any single person for Hungary's current border wall. So he personally first called for a border wall in 2013. And he made it a major campaign issue for Jobbik. And then Fidesz co-opted that issue because it became a winning campaign issue. And then Fidesz, in fact, did build a wall, and it has been very successful. And then Taratsky was expelled from the party, and Jobbik just went radically to the left. It was really bizarre. Well, Taratsky, he has a new party called My Homeland Movement. And they didn't run everywhere. They only ran in certain counties and whatnot. But in the county where Taratsky lives, in Schöngrad, they got 9%. And they basically ran as a very hardcore conservative nationalist party. And the other counties that they ran in, they got between 4 and 6%, on top of the fact that Fidesz did phenomenal in every single county. Every single county council, Fidesz did very well. Hungary remains a very conservative country. I don't see any evidence of any kind of hardcore left-wing revolution in Hungary going down, despite what you may have heard in the media. So overall, I would say that conservatives are still doing extremely well in Poland and Hungary. These are still probably the most conservative countries in Europe. All right, thanks for watching this video. Click the like button, post a comment, tell me what you think about this, and please consider making a donation to my YouTube channel, as YouTube has mass demonetized all my videos. And I would like to thank Eric and Elvin for making donations. And please support my sponsor, Patriotic Flags, the online flag store, patriotic-flags.com, and click the subscribe button. New video every few days.